Hey y'all, Dixie here. I am finally back home from my PCT THRU-HIKE and it feels so good to be done. Before I start focusing on, certain topics and cover my gear in more detail, about things that worked for me and things that didn't, I wanted to go ahead and share the gear that I had in my pack when I finished and, basically through the end of the trail in the Cascades in Washington. First, I'm going to cover the big three. So for my pack, in Northern California, I ended up swapping to the Z-Packs Arc Haul, and I ended up taking it through the rest of the trip. Like I said, I'll go into more detail, especially about the packs in another video, but just wanted y'all to know that I did end up sticking with this through the rest of my hike, and will likely use it on the CDT. For my tent, I ended up with the Nemo Hornet. It's a one-person, just right at the end of the trip. As you may have noticed in my last video from the PCT, I mentioned borrowing this from another hiker because I'd noticed some holes in my Z-Packs duplex and didn't have time to repair them and all that because I was in a race with the weather. Although I will be sending this tent back to its owner, I will say that it worked just fine. And if any of y'all are interested in this tent, it was a good tent, and I do think that it would be just fine for a through hike. He used it for 1,000 miles of the PCT and didn't have any issues with it. So definitely, a fan of the Nemo Hornet tents. And I think the two-person is pretty comparable to this, except for a little higher in price and weight. For my sleeping bag, I stuck with, in Washington, the 10-degree Z-Packs sleeping bag that I ended up swapping to sometime in Southern California. I think that, I'm a pretty cold nature person, and this 10-degree bag worked just fine for the whole trail and was warm enough even, in the Cascades when it was pretty chilly at night. So definitely a fan of the sleeping bag. The remaining piece of my sleep system is my Neo Extra Light, and I really enjoyed using the sleeping pad. I know a lot of folks were concerned that it wouldn't be comfortable because it's the petite one, it only comes down to my knees. But what I did is I just slept with my pack under my legs. And that wasn't an issue at all in the desert or in areas where it doesn't rain. But when I started getting soaked during the day and my pack was wet, then you have the issue of, well, do you put your legs on top of your soaked pack and get your sleeping bag wet, right? So if you are going to go with a shorter pad like this, or if you use your pack in any way when you're sleeping at night, what I did was I had an emergency poncho, just like one of those cheap ones you can get, at Walmart or outdoor stores, and I just wrapped my pack in that. And then another time I used painter's drop cloth, just that clear, real thin plastic, and you can just roll it up and stick it in your pack somewhere, not next to something that you want to keep dry. But anyway, so that's what I did. I just wrapped it and then still slept with my legs on it, and it kept my sleeping bag dry. Another little accessory that I added in addition to the emergency rain poncho or the drop cloth that I was talking about is hot hands. So I carried probably enough for like 1 or 2 a day in a stretch. It is adding extra weight, but it was really, really nice after hiking in the freezing rain all day to be able to climb into my sleeping bag and throw one of these at the bottom to put my feet on or to warm my hands up before I started cooking dinner. One of the things about the cold weather and your body just feeling freezing cold is you are burning so many calories trying to keep your body warm, and the last thing you want to do when you get to camp and climb in your sleeping bag, or at least for me, was cook. But it's very important that you do eat, because that's the fastest way to warm up, is to eat something and to give your body the calories that it really needs. So these helped keep me motivated to go ahead and cook, or to eat a snack or do something. These were just a big morale booster. And yeah, you've got added weight, but it just really was worth it. So I guess this is more of a luxury item, but something, a tip at least, that I would recommend. And trekking poles. I use the Black Diamond carbon fiber cork grip, I think they're called Alpine trekking poles, and they were wonderful. I will carry the same set with me on the CDT. The tips on this held up very well. These never wore down enough to where I had to get them replaced or anything like that, so they held in like a champ. I've had some people ask, with the conditions that I dealt with in Washington, did I feel like trail runners were still fine with the level of snow and everything? And I will say yes. It did start getting chilly when the sun went down, but for the most part I stayed pretty warm while hiking, and my feet were never really freezing cold. You know, they did get chilly, but most of the time if I was moving I could stay pretty warm. So I still feel like trail runners are going to dry out faster than any kind of Gore-Tex or waterproof boot, and no matter what footwear you have, it is going to get wet if you are in the rain and the snow and the sleet for several days. If I had dealt with much more snow or more consistent snow, I may have looked into different options, or even, you know, carried more socks to change out more frequently, something like that. But for what I dealt with, and if I were to be back out in those situations, I would keep my footwear the same and use trail runners, or more specifically my Ultra Lone Peak 3.0s. For my insoles, I use Dr. Scholl's for plantar fasciitis, and because I wear men's trail runners, then I also use the men's insoles. And ladies, don't just push away the idea of wearing men's trail runners. A lot of times these, you know, might fit your foot better than a woman's shoe, especially when your feet start flattening out and spreading out and things like that from beating them up with hiking so much. And for my camp shoes, I just wore these THRU foam sandals that are really lightweight. My clothes stayed the same for this stretch. For the most part, I just added a few things. So still had my Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisper coat, and it is down. Patagonia Barely baggy breeches, and these things held in like a champ. I mean, they're sewn together with floss, but they held in. They worked really well the whole through hike. Still had my PFG button-up top. This was really nice because, you know, when it was hot, I could take it off and just hike in my sports bra, or roll up the sleeves, unbutton it, whatever. It's, you know, very aerated, and, you know, just having long sleeves was nice for when it was cold and rainy. So at one point I ended up getting basically rained and snowed off the trail. I woke up with everything soaked one morning and ended up having to go 7 miles back to town. And while I was there, I decided that during the day while I was hiking, I just wasn't staying warm enough. So there wasn't a gear shop in town. So last minute, you know, I was just running around looking for another base layer to be able to hike in. And really, I should have planned ahead for this, but I bought these leggings at a gas station and they worked just fine. It was like a one-size-fits-all legging. This material is spandex and nylon, and it actually dried really fast. So even when I was getting rained on and things were getting wet up under my rain gear or sweaty or whatever, a lot of times by the time I set up my tent and got inside to change, these were nearly dry. So they do dry pretty quickly, even though they were just some cheapo leggings I got at the gas station. But I would recommend when it's cold and rainy having another layer to hike in, because I only had those shorts. I also added this little head deal here to keep my ears warm. I don't love hats, and this kind of kept my ears warm without overheating my head too much, because it allows it to, you know, cool off. Sometimes I slept in it, and then even, you know, when it was raining, I tried not to use it while it was raining, but sometimes, you know, it was just so cold that it was nice to have something to help keep my ears warm. But would definitely recommend having something like this, or a beanie. I also had this little neck warmer thing here and this helped keep me warm so much. I think that if I had to choose between this or a hat and the little ear cover thing, I would choose this. It really helped just keep the heat in while I was hiking and it was cold, and even at night once I got my tent and was trying to get warm. These are also things that I did not plan ahead for. I know, stupid, right? But when you're out there and you're hitting towns that don't have gear shops, you're kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? The temperatures have dropped, I'm freezing at night. So luckily there was a local in town that was like, here, take this stuff, you know. I was really, really appreciative of that because it really helped keep me warm. Something else that I didn't really plan ahead for was that my hands were gonna be freezing cold. And I'm gonna tell you, my whole body was cold and miserable while I was hiking in the sleet and snow and rain. But the most miserable body part were my hands. And I really wish that I had planned ahead. I originally had some possum down gloves from Z-Packs that I did like, but I lost one of them on Mount Whitney. So I never did replace them. And so my original plan was to have the possum down gloves, and then they have these mitten like covers that are waterproof that go over those gloves. I haven't used them, so I can't personally vouch for them, but that's likely what I'll plan for the future. But at last minute, I'm stuck with shopping at a gas station for leggings and gloves, right? So I ended up with these head gloves. They seemed, you know, like they would repel water pretty well. They did for a little while, and then they got soaked. And then my hands were absolutely more miserable because I feel like, you know, these were just keeping them freezing rather than any kind of warm. So what I ended up doing on the fly, because my gloves weren't working in the rain, was I used an extra pair of socks as mittens, and then I put a Ziploc bag over my little mitten and tucked it into my raincoat sleeve. And this actually helped a lot. They still did get a little damp, but the Ziploc bag helped trap the heat, and at least they were damp and warm instead of wet and freezing. So Perk also did a similar thing. He had gloves on, and he just put grocery bags over his gloves that weren't waterproof gloves. I would highly recommend in Washington, when it's going to be freezing cold and rainy, if you're there in that time frame, to carry an extra pair of socks. I had the ones that I used as gloves or mittens, and then I had 2 pair to hike in and 1 pair to sleep in. And the reason I say that, they don't weigh that much, and it is such a huge morale booster to be able to put on a pair of dry socks in the morning, even if you're sliding them into soaking wet shoes, because I don't know why, it just is. And if you've ever been out there and experienced that, you know what I'm talking about. Putting soaking, freezing cold socks on your feet, it's just miserable. So having, you know, a pair to put on, and then maybe if you hit a day that's actually sunny, you can, you know, dry one of the other pairs out. So but if you're in a stretch of freezing cold, rainy weather for like 3 days, you're gonna really be thankful to have a pair of dry socks to put on and hike in. But make sure you keep your 1 sleeping pair dry. For underwear, I carried a couple pair of Ex Officios. I love this underwear for hiking. Highly recommend it. I carried 1 sports bra, just a generic. I think I got this from Academy Sports, and you know, just whatever works for you, but I only had 1. And for sleeping, I had the thick pair of socks I was talking about, and then the Smart Wool leggings, and this Arc'teryx long sleeve top. The only thing I will say about this top is I wish it had thumb holes. It is really nice to get a top that has thumb holes, but this one was nice and fuzzy on the inside, and I really did like that. And I liked that you could zip it up and down to kind of, you know, release some heat if you're getting too warm. For my rain gear, I have the Outdoor Research Helium coat. I like that it has a little like bill thing, a little hangover on top there. So it kind of gives you, you know, I don't know, like you're wearing a hat, kind of keeps the rain out of your eyes a little bit. The only thing that I wish that it had is pit zips. So if you're looking for a raincoat with pit zips, I used for a while the anti-gravity gear raincoat, and it does have pit zips. And the pants that I have are anti-gravity gear rain pants, and it's kind of nice. They have this Velcro deal here on the bottom, so you can tighten up the leg and maybe not get so much like splashing action up inside your breeches. But they have a drawstring top, pretty nice. This is the stuff sack that my clothes lived in. For my kitchen, I use the MSR Pocket Rocket stove. This is just a small fuel can that attaches to it. I like to use the small ones because normally I could use one of these up before I got to the next town, hopefully. But sometimes in towns they only have the larger ones, and you take what you can get. For my pot, I used the grease pot. It's just an aluminum grease pot. You can get it online. I think it's Stanco is the brand. Pretty light. You're not really supposed to eat out of aluminum, but you know, it's just for a limited amount of time. So this is just a pot cozy that I made to help keep my food warm and help with fuel consumption. Bic lighter. This lighter right here is the best lighter. I had one just like it, but it was orange. For the Appalachian Trail, it lasted me my whole through hike, and this blue Bic lighter lasted me the entire PCT, so, and it still works just fine. Titanium spork. I always keep a bandana in my cook pot just to help dry things out, and you know, whenever I wash my pot and my spoon and wipe stuff off, and kind of use as a pot holder while I'm cooking. Because I'm a coffee addict, I always use a separate cup for coffee in the morning. So a lot of people will use just the pot that they cook food in, you know, and just make coffee and drink out of that. But I like to eat my breakfast and drink my coffee at the same time, or hot chocolate at night. So I would just boil enough water for my meal and hot chocolate or coffee, and then, you know, sprinkle the powdered coffee or hot chocolate or whatever in the cup, pour the water designated for it in the cup, and then pour my food into the pot, you know, with the rest of the water in the pot. But these Sina Summit mugs are nice because they collapse down and don't take up too much space, you know, in your setup. For my food bag, I use the Z-Packs Bear Bag Kit. It comes as a kit with the cord and the bag. It held up pretty well during my hike, but I did have a stingy mouse that chewed through and stole some of my food when I passed out one night and with my food bag in my vestibule before I could get it away from my campsite. For water filtration, I used the Sawyer Squeeze. I just screwed it right on top of a Smart Water bottle and drink through it, because the thing that I disliked the most about the Sawyer Squeeze was actual squeezing, you know, like sitting down and taking a lot of time to filter dirty water into a clean bottle and all that. So I just did away with that and streamlined the process by collecting my dirty water in a Smart Water bottle, screwing it on the top, and just drink as it's filtering. And then same thing for cooking food, you know, I just squeeze into my pot. And really, as long as your water's not too full of sediment, you could cook with dirty water if you're going to be boiling your water anyway. And then there's my Toiletries bag. I've got typical things in here like a small hairbrush, a razor. Some people don't shave their legs and armpits, but I like to. A little mirror that came with the brush. Some lotion. I do carry conditioner also. Tweezers and clippers. Some extra hair ties and floss. But floss is also part of my repair system. And then of course a toothbrush and toothpaste. And I always make sure to carry some ibuprofen and diarrhea medicine. I don't think I need to go into detail on why you should do that. For my repair kit, I also carry duct tape rolled up on itself. I'm down to the slim pickings now, don't have much left. A needle that I tuck into the duct tape. And I would recommend carrying a patch kit for inflatable sleeping pads. It's not necessary. It's not gonna, you know, hurt you to have to sleep on the ground a couple of nights, but it is really nice. I didn't have one, but luckily my Neo Air Extra Light got a hole in it when I, like an idiot, slept on. It was like a little shrub that I didn't even notice when I was putting my tent down, and it popped a little hole in my pad, but I was able to repair it with Perks Repair Kit, and I didn't have any issues out of it the rest of the hike. And my neck knife, which is made by MT Knives, is the Genesis 2. I really like that knife because you get so used to wearing it you don't even know it's there, but it's easily accessible when you need it for cutting cheese or summer sausage, and you know, it's right there if you were to need it while hitchhiking or to use in a self-protection situation. Electronics. So of course I had my iPhone 7, my GorillaPod tripod. For backup battery power in the last stretch, I made sure to carry both of my Anchor chargers. So this is the 20,000 milliamp charger, and this is the 10,000 milliamp hour charger. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough juice to keep my phone powered because I was using gut hooks, and there is a lot less service in the final stretches in Washington compared to the rest of the trail. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, I would have enough battery power regardless. And then also, you know, you have to think about what are you going to be doing during your hike. Are you recording a lot of videos and taking a lot of pictures? Are you just using it for gut hooks navigation? Or, you know, it really is dependent upon the person and how much they're using their phone. So, but for me, with videoing a lot, I wanted to have power for those purposes and also navigating using gut hooks. Have my black diamond headlamp. I carried 2 moment lenses. One was a wide angle lens and one was a macro lens. My little phone remote, it helps with, you know, if you're trying to take a selfie or a video selfie or whatever, instead of having to hit timer and then run and get into place, you know, or a group picture or something like that. This is pretty lightweight, but it was really nice to have when I was in those situations. Of course, I have various charging cords and my little plug-in. I like using the 2-port USB plugs because that way you're only taking one outlet in a wall. When there are a lot of hikers concentrated in one area, outlets are a precious commodity, and so you don't want to be stingy and just, you know, take up a lot of outlets. So this is a nice way to charge 2 things at once and only use one outlet. And for all of y'all who kept asking me how I was getting the aerial shots, so I have a Mavic Pro drone. With the drone and the remote and the charger, you're looking at a little over 3 pounds, but I felt like it would really add something to the videos, and so to me it was worth the wait, but definitely a luxury item, not something that you have to have for a THRU-HIKE. Another luxury item that I carried was my composition book. I've been keeping a journal, a written journal in a composition notebook since I was like 14 years old, so it's worth the, I think, 11 ounces to me. But a lot of people do carry like a little journal or something just to write thoughts and ideas down, or you know, to reflect on the experience, I suppose. Although I would love one of those fancy watches, you know, that tells you what elevation you're at, I went with old trusty the whole trail, this Expedition watch made by Timex. It's pretty cheap. You can get it at like Walmart or Target or online on Amazon, and it comes with all the functions that I so desired, except telling me what elevation it is. So that's the gear that I had with me at the end of the trail, and some of the decisions that I wish I had made a little bit sooner on, like, you know, getting that additional gear to deal with the cold weathers and the cold temperatures. So regardless, really, if you're going no-boat or SOBO, if you're going to be in the Cascades and in the Pacific Northwest when you're in cool temperatures, then you definitely want to prepare for that and figure out, you know, how you can be the most comfortable and safe in camping and hiking in those colder temperatures. If you have any questions about the gear that I talked about today, please feel free to comment below. Like I said, I will be going into more detail on some of the gear, like the packs that I used and things like that, but I do want to see what y'all would like to see me talk about as far as specific topics like, you know, getting water on the trail, or the trail community in general, or different foods that I cooked, you know, just any of that stuff. If you want me to do a video on certain topics, I would love to hear what y'all want to see. And with that, I just want to say thank y'all so much for cheering me on and commenting and sharing the videos and all of that while I was out there on the PCT. All of your encouragement really helped along the way during the bad days, and I'm looking forward to getting this information out to y'all to help with your potential section or through hikes, and get as much out to you as I can before I start the CDT next spring. And with that, we will see y'all next time.